Hi guys, I'm excited to cover today's video. Today we are debunking maximalism. Maximalism and maximalist styles have been a big conversation as of late. I have many videos on the maximalist design style and the aesthetic that goes around this. And a comment that does come up quite a bit is around something that is our first myth we're going to bust. And that is that the maximalist interior design style means hoarding. False. Maximalism is not about hoarding. Maximalism is a style. So the reason why maximalism is not hoarding is because hoarding doesn't have to do with a style or aesthetic. Hoarding does have to do with collecting a lot of items. However, they're more for the sake of gathering those items. And I do know that there can be a lot of stress around people who do have that compulsion to keep everything or store things, and it's very different from maximalism. And I do think that there could be a whole discussion around hoarding and what makes somebody do that, but that is not the same thing. With maximalism, you are creating a curated space, and maximalism doesn't have to be a ton of stuff. It's just not minimalism. It's curating your space to tell a story. And that's the difference between hoarding. A lot of times with hoarding, people will be, maybe clothes that they can't get rid of and it ends up just kind of piling up. Or as much as I love books, it might be where there's books and boxes of books and newspapers and everything kind of like everywhere. It's not so much about the story, it's about not being able to let go. That's where maximalism is different. It's not about not being able to let go. It's about taking items that really have a lot of value to you as a person and have a story to it. So for me, I am an avid reader. I love reading. I have lots of books. However, if I don't have room for them, I'm not going to just kind of keep bringing them into the space. It's very intentional and they have a home. Another thing is bringing in antique pieces or bringing in pieces that are heirlooms that are handed down, or even searching for pieces that will build a story within your space. So one of the things with maximalism, and I do have a whole playlist on different maximalist looks, is really curating your space around the look and feel that you want. We have items or looks where they're more dark, like dark academia and more of that gothic interior design style. But then we have other maximalist looks that are more Victorian era or more traditional, which have a completely different look, much more light, much more bright, much more airy. So that was the biggest thing with maximalism that I wanted to, debunk, is that it is not hoarding. The next thing that I want to debunk about maximalism is that as a maximalist, you must have a more is more mental attitude, and that is a myth. I would categorize myself as a minimalist mindset with a maximalist design aesthetic. What I mean by that is, as a minimalist, I don't necessarily go out and buy new things. So I don't feel the need to be constantly purchasing items for my maximalist interior. I do, however, curate my space and use items that I've inherited or I've thrifted over time, but they're very, particular and only when needed. I don't tend to buy stuff just for the sake of buying stuff to create a look within my space. I definitely would say that my personal maximalist style is very eclectic, just because I have stuff from many different styles and eras, whether it's been, a vintage piece that I found years ago or something that I've just owned for a long time, but it's still in really good shape. So, why would I replace it? I have pieces that are very gothic in style. I have pieces that are very boho in style. I have pieces that are very traditional in style. And for me, by being a minimalist maximalist, it means that I don't find the need to just replace an item for the sake of replacing an item. So I think that's a really big myth, is that because you have a maximalist aesthetic, that you don't have a minimalist mindset. And that's where I truly do feel that that is a huge myth, because I have even seen on this channel how many people can relate to that. A big part of a maximalist is just letting your space grow and evolve with you, and that means that you're not necessarily, getting rid of stuff all the time. And I think that comes with age too. I've owned a home for a very long time. Purchased my first home in my 20s. So very fortunate and lucky to have been able to do so. But as I've grown and evolved and had a family and we've built stuff together and, collected things over time, I definitely find that that's where that minimalist / maximalist happens, is like, it's just a collection over your life. So I'm sure as I get older, there'll be even more stuff, because if I don't need to get rid of it, or if it's in good shape, I don't feel the need to just toss it out, So try to find a purpose for everything that I have. And I think that's a really big part of maximalism, is purpose, story, and, keeping those things that have some importance to you. And the third myth that we want to debunk on maximalism is that it's very cluttered. And I think that's something that it's almost like that hoarding, except a little different, but just that, there's too much to dust and there's too much stuff. Not all maximalist styles have a lot of stuff. I think that's where people get a little bit confused, because honestly, most spaces are a quote unquote maximalist space. Anything that has kind of extra decor in it to create a look is a maximalist look. I think that's where it's just a new term, to be honest. A French country look, a boho look, an Art Deco vibe, a Hollywood glam vibe, a traditional vibe, Victorian, Gothic, dark academia. These are all maximalist looks. The times when you're not really a maximalist or a maximalist look is when you get into things like mid-century modern, Scandinavian, which you can sometimes have a little bit more maximalist tendencies, but traditionally Scandinavian design doesn't really fall into that. The industrial modern look, there's also like more of an industrial look that is more maximalism, but you get into this more modern feel. Basically, very modern design styles, very contemporary design styles will not lend towards that maximalist look, because a big part of those is focusing on the architectural detail and having limited adornments throughout the space, because it is truly to be a clean and clutter-free space, and its style aesthetic is based around that. So I think that's where there's a lot of confusion with the maximalist style, because people do see the extreme, images that are shown with maximalism, which obviously, is really interesting to look at and really beautiful and can be created in such a really, visually interesting way. Like, think of like steampunk, like that's really fun and playful and interesting. But the reality is a traditional interior space is also, a maximalist space, just like the arts and crafts was more of a maximalist space. It's really just not having that super clean aesthetic. And yeah, it doesn't mean that you have a lot of clutter. It just is, you have stuff on display. You might have some talking things. You have, layers and colors and fabrics and textiles. You do create a much more layered design aesthetic than you would in a more, modern look, clean, minimalist look. One of the things with maximalism is it can lend towards some clutter if you kind of go with it a little bit further, but that's really a personal preference versus an absolute must for this look. So I just wanted to cover some things today that were just debunking this maximalism thoughts and processes, really based from a lot of the comments that I do get in the videos, because I have done a lot of maximalist videos. So comment below, what are you guys curious about with the maximalist style? Is there something that surprised you today? Something that you're still curious about? I would love to hear that. So if you want to see more maximalist videos, I do have a selection of them in a playlist. However, if you do want some more minimalist styles, I actually have a bunch of those too. So I'll include some playlists here for you guys, and you can check out some other design styles. And until next time, bye.